Hello and welcome to COVID-19 is a cloud security catalyst. Thank you for joining this session, and in the next 40-45 minutes we'll talk about security, about cloud security, and how the last 1 year, 1 year and a half impacted the way how cloud and how security is taken into consideration by the organizations that are moving to cloud. Before starting to talk about security and what is the current status, I think that we should talk first of all about where we are now and why security and cloud security is so important. The rules of the game change in the last 18 months, and the way how the organization needs to scale it is in a very different way. Just think about retails that had a small presence on online, and over the night they realize that from a small shop or from a small online revenue, they need to handle almost all their orders through their online platform. And we don't talk about logistics and warehouse. Let's just talk about infrastructure, about IT, about their IT solutions, and things were not easy. And cloud was a good option and is a good option, but we need to be aware of the things that we need to configure, we need to set up to ensure that the cloud environment is safe. And in a case of a breach, of a data breach or any kind of breach, we can track, we can know exactly what that person done, what kind of data he accessed, for how long, and maybe we can even track after he took the content where he opened that content or if he resold it, if he reseller it. Now, figures, especially for the last 18 months, because this is what we want to target. Take into account that the global adoption of digitalization has increased with around 55% in the last 7 years. So might not look so much, but from the way how you do business, from the way how you sell your products and your services, it's very important that more and more companies decided to go online. And until let's say February or March 2020, the strategy was okay, a slow adoption. But with the pandemic and with the lockdown and with the more or less interactions, guess what? 48% of the organization had to accelerate their cloud migration. So some of the companies were thinking about cloud, were thinking about to adopt cloud, but they had in planning 2 or 3 years. Last year in March, a lot of them decided to do the migration in the current financial year or in the current calendaristic year. So they had problems. Not only the finding the best vendor, the best CSP where they should run their systems, but also they had to look for the right people with the right skills. In a very short period of time, some of them had to build their capabilities. They had to educate very fast their teams, and with working from home, that was not an easy job because it's not same as in-person class or in-person trainings. And the third thing that they had to do is to build their cloud center of excellence. And if you think that the cloud center of excellence in an organization should contain all the best practices, all the recommendations, all the blueprints that can be used by the organization to enhance, to adopt cloud, that was not an easy task to build in a few months. And of course, they might forgotten some things, they might rush. And these are some concerns that we need now to be aware, because now is the perfect moment in time when a part of the organization are already running inside cloud and they have enough time or they have budget to do the consolidation, especially from the security point of view. review and identify where they might do some improvements and how. And not only that, but also from the operation and management point of view, it's very important to ensure that you have the right services and the right systems that are able to track, are able to provide you insights related to what is the user behavior, what are the actions that the user is doing on the cloud services, and to track as much as possible all the steps that each user is doing. Now, think about the 60% adjusted cloud cybersecurity posture as a result of distributed workforce. What does this mean? That a large organization in the last 18 months decided to invest more in their cloud cybersecurity. And especially because a lot of their people were starting to work remotely from their home, and at the same time they started to use cloud native services. And the priorities change from 2020 to 2021. Cloud security became very important, and the organization started to look more as a platform as a service and a software as a service features and services that CSP are offering versus the standard software as a service. This means that the adoption took the next step, and that's correct. Now, what was the impact of COVID-19 from the security point of view? How it changed the rules of the game? Take into account that only in EU the number of cyber attacks increased with 250%. That's huge in only 12 months. And it's crazy because it means that a lot of organizations were attacked using online tool, online system, and so on. And people were still working from home. It means that they already had problems because not all of them accepted working from home or were ready to adopt working from home for all their employees. And also last year, the breaches of large breaches increased with 273. It means that in 2019, if we usually had only one large breach on large systems, now we had around, let's say, 3.5, even 4 in some cases. And this will be because it means that it's more effort to the security team, to the IT team to ensure that they are patching, they are fixing, they are protecting their solution in the right way. Now, working from home, what gives us the opportunity? To browse. Not only to work from home, not only to stay closely to our friends and family, but also when you have some free time, you don't go anymore at a coffee with your colleague from other floor in the front of the company. Maybe you just look on the internet, reading news, finding out different things. And it means that you are more open for phishing scams. And yes, working from home increased the phishing scam with 45%. Might not sound as a big number, but think about it, 45% of people fall into different phishing scams. And it's very easy. Just in this morning, when I opened my Yahoo email account, I just seen in my spam, because from time to time I'm also checking my spam, an email from PayPal that were saying that my account was blocked because of a transaction that I've done this week. And I need to enter in the PayPal to confirm that I've done the transaction. And it's funny, because 2 days ago, I just done PayPal Pay to somebody, and they used a Revolut card that was locked when Revolut notified that I'm using PayPal. I unlocked, I've done the payment, but it was very interesting the connection between When I've done the payment with the PayPal, because I think that I didn't use PayPal for the last 2 years, blocking the Revolut card, and also in my mind I said, okay, it might block me in the future when I will do PayPal attacks. And guess what? I had in my inbox that mail that was saying that my PayPal account was locked. Very easily, other people like me or like you could fall, could click, and their PayPal account might be stolen. So we have the increase of phishing attacks with 350%, and half of the people were scams, were falling in different phishing scams. Talking about the breaches and security breaches, think about that starting only from February to May 2020, around 500,000 people globally were affected by different breaches, by different security breaches. And I'm not referring to general breaches, I'm referring to the ones when you are in a video conference, any kind of video conference, and your own data were stolen. Your name, your email address, maybe your phone, and so on, and sold on dark web. How they've done that? That's another story. But think about it all the time when you're joining an online video conference, you're sharing some data. You're sharing the data with the platform, but also sometimes other attendees can see your data. So a lot of things can be done and can be done to get your data, to steal your personal data. Now, before jumping to security, before talking about security, also I want to share with you some insight related to how cloud adoption and cloud workloads increased in the last 1 year. So the increase in cloud workloads in different regions is around 70-65%. For APAC and EMEA is 75%, is 70%, sorry. For AMR is around 65, and for Japan it's around 58. But it's a lot of increase in just 1 year. I would say that it's huge and was a big step forward. After notifying the number of cloud projects that I'm involved, the threat become higher and higher. Now, if you're looking at different industries where the cloud workload started to increase and increase drastically, 83% was on chemical manufacturers. When I saw this information, I was shocked. What? Chemical manufacturing? How come? Because they're doing a lot of simulations, and simulations need a lot of computation, and also for chemical manufacturing, they were not yet, let's say, adopting cloud. So this was a good opportunity, more or less, to force this and to go to cloud. And secondly, as everybody would expect, was at retail with 60%. Why only 60%? Because taking into account that a lot of large retailers were already owning large data centers or were already working with, let's say, private cloud providers or large providers of IT services and IT infrastructure on different countries, and basically they just ramp up there. Also on insurance, that you could say that is indirectly affected by COVID. The increase was with around 74%. More and more people were doing their insurance and things like that from their home. They were not going to an agent or to a location to talk about the insurance options and so on. So they also had to adopt cloud. This is an old story. Maybe you are aware of that. And it happened before the pandemic in August 28, when one of the big players on the market, Vim, had configured one of their AWS systems to do automatically backups. That was perfect. The backups were done on an AWS S3 storage. Still, that was perfect. Nothing outrage from there. The problem was that the backup was done on an AWS free storage that was public available, meaning that anybody from the internet could access it. In just a few hours, because the time frame where that storage was publicly available on the internet was a very short period of time, but still there were some downloads, full download operation of the data backups. Now the backups were encrypted. That's fine and protected with the username and password. Nevertheless, take into account that that even if you don't protect your data with strong username and passwords, especially passwords, they can be very easily broken. Just to give you an example, I think in 2014 or the last decade, I think it happened in Chicago. I was at a security session where in a 90-minute session, I saw how a backup of an SQL database, it was encrypted, was broken, was break. Basically, it was replaced, the token of the password was replaced inside the backup, and after that, they were able to do the full restore of the database on their own server. All the tools that they use, and I think they use around 8 or 9 different tools, were more or less public available on the internet. I'm more than sure that you could find all the tools in one day, and anybody, even if you are 12 years old, if you would follow all the steps, would be very easily to be done. So cloud vendors like Microsoft, AWS, and GCP are offering us a lot of tools that we can use to secure our system, to secure our payloads, to secure our data. But still, we need to be aware how we do this configuration, how we protect our data, and what are the security features that we need. Because some of them are pretty expensive. So you need to find the right balance between premium security that each cloud vendor is offering versus the free and default one, or to bring your own security system that you are using on-prem system, because in the end you can have a virtual appliance inside any cloud vendor where you can deploy your own firewall, your own security monitoring system, and so on. Okay, we talked a lot about some facts until now. I expect that most of you are developers or are technical persons that are working from home for different companies and so on. You might have a repository, let's say a GitHub repository, a CI/CD, a pipeline, and you are the dev hero that is working. You are working on the project, you are doing a great job. Your system is using, let's say, Azure storage, and to access the storage you use the account key, the full account key. And of course, you are pushing that in the infrastructure repository, where that is very secure, is not publicly available on the internet, and so on. Everything here, it's super secure. Nobody can access it, and that's perfectly fine. Your dev machine, it's very secure, and everything it's fine over there. Even still, you are also using the machine for your own needs, and somebody is pushing a malware on your system is able to get your Windows credentials and get access to your machine. From that on, he has access not only to the repository, but also he puts his hand on the storage account key, from where he can go on different environments where that key is used to get access to customer data. This is why it's very important and all the time to remember that segregation of teams, roles, and responsibilities is very important. Developers should never have access directly for long periods of time on environment like testing or pre-production where customer data are used or sensitive data. There are some situations where you would like to provide temporary access, but only temporary access. It means for 1 hour and 2 hours, and be very cautious with that. Don't just provide access and to forget about that. So let's jump to the subject. What can we do? What can we do to protect our systems? There are a lot of things. So if you take a look on Azure or AWS or GCP, you will see a lot of recommendation for each service, for each use case, and even for each industry. You will find a list of recommendations, list of services, and things like that. But there are some common things that I found that people are forgetting about. And what I will try to cover in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, excuse me, are the things that I've seen that most of the time forgotten and are very simple to fix. Even so, they hope a big security hole that could be used by anybody. So, for first thing that we can do is limit the use of the cloud preview services and features. What does this mean? For example, in the case of Microsoft Azure, we have, for example, a service or feature that can be in a private preview, in public preview, or in general availability. What is the difference between them? In the private preview, there's no SLA, there's no formal support. For public preview, there's some support, but there's no SLA. And for GA, for general availability, you have full SLA support, formal support, and so on. Now, the recommendation that also vendors are having, the cloud vendor are having, and you need to take into account for production environment, for environment when you are use sensitive customer data. All the time use only general availability services. And a very good example here is, or if you remember the Cosmos DB security issue that happened at the end of August. But what we forgot, or a lot of people forgot to mention, is that happened on a feature of Cosmos DB or integration of a service to Cosmos DB that was in public preview. Meaning that if you would follow the recommendation that Microsoft is providing, you should never go in production with something like that because it's a public preview. Sometimes it's very hard to do that, but still you need to be aware of that and you need to be very cautious. Now, how you can find or how you can identify if a service is in a preview or not, there are two ways that you can do that. The first of all, when you have the full directory of services, let's take this example, the full directory of Azure, of Microsoft Azure services, what we can notify here that in the dashboard we have this preview tag on the services that are in preview, and can be used very easily just to know about what are the services that are in preview and to not go with them in production, or to get a clear timeline when they will be live in GA. This is very easy to do. The tricky part is with the services, with the features, especially from each service, because some of them might be in preview, some of them might not be in preview. Especially if you have teams that are using infrastructure as a code, for example, the resource management templates, they might not be all the time aware of what is in preview, what is not in preview, the current state of the preview, and so on. For each service, for each Azure service, you will find pages under the documentation of each service that is specifying what are the preview features, what is the current state, and what is covering. So you'll be able to know exactly if some features that you are planning to use are in a preview phase or not. What else we can do? And this is, I think, the most stronger thing that we can do is to educate all the organization about cloud security, and not only the IT team. No, try to educate at a minimal level, at the foundation level, or as AWS is calling it, a practitioner level, all the people from the organization, HR, financial, and so on. Why? Because each of them are using directly or indirectly some cloud services. They might end up very easily, not in the cloud portal or in the console, in the cloud console, no, but they might end up in some specific location where this information is very important to avoid a security issue. Now, you don't need to invest a lot in this kind of trainings. What you can find on each CSP, you will find free trainings, especially like, for example, the one that I'm showing from Microsoft, that are offering different type of trainings for different roles. For business analyst, for general seller, for pre-seller, for data science. But also you have all the time, for example, you have the Azure Fundamental and AWS Cloud Practitioner certification. Not the certification, but the content is very generic, it's very big. You ensure that people are understanding the base concepts and covering the content just 4 or 5 hours. They will already have the core information that would allow them to understand how cloud works and where that application is running and why sometimes they might have different issues. What can we do? What more can we do? First of all, we can use more identity access management. And the YAML part on AWS and on Azure, are very, very mature, and they might not be so easy to be used all the time, but at least it's providing you the power to have a full control and use less the master user, for example, the database access, that admin username and password, or that kind of user that are masters and have full access to all the databases or to specific database. You shouldn't use them. And try to use less account master key and tokens. Think about Azure Storage Account, for example. The account key, you should never use it. You have the shared access signature, you have the identity access management. You can provide access to different services and different systems, to the storage, to the database, and to other resources very easily, and without even having to provide tokens, because inside the cloud, inside, for example, the Azure, all the services can do almost full authentication and authorization based on their service principle, and that's awesome. Externally, you have limited tokens, like for example shared access signature, that can be used to provide a third-party access to a storage maybe, or to some of other type of data repositories and so on. The problem with this kind of keys and token is that sometimes the team can forget them, can push them inside the configuration that would end up in a repository, even if it's a private repository, still is not safe enough. Especially when you have a lot of people that are working, or multiple teams that are working on the same repository, on the same project. The teams are changing, but some people that are leaving the project and go on another project might still have access to the old repository, even if not correct, still it happens. So you need ways how you can ensure that sensitive data are not pushed to that repository. A very easy thing that you can do is using different scanning tools, like the one that I'm sharing now, that basically what is doing is fully scanning a repository to ensure that there are no secrets, there are no Azure, AWS, or GCP secrets pushed to that repository. And if any kind of secrets are identified, automatically he would alert you, or you can take an action. And you can do pretty nice things. For example, you can do this kind of scans before a push, and you can reject commits where secrets are detected. You can have iterated them in the pipeline and the build to fail, and automatically even to remove the secrets if a secret or sensitive data is identified. And during your 90 scan, you can remove all the secrets. You can even freeze pipelines or repository in a case you find issues, or you can even freeze the access to the user that's done a commit and push that secret to the main repository. So there are a lot of things that you can, or even for example, a nice thing that I seen is that at the moment in time when a secret is identified in a push or during the night scan, automatically the system was able to regenerate the access tokens and all the credentials for that service to ensure that the keys were not made public available to a third party. We talked about the keys. Now let's talk about YAML policies and Azure AD role-based access control because it's pretty important. And why? Because using Azure Shared Access Signature or Endava Signature together with them, we can have the power to limit the access to anonymous users to our storage, to our system. And this combined with firewall rules. And please remember about the firewall rules, because almost all storage type services and also workload services have now the ability to specify very simple firewall rules, at least to specify a whitelist. What are the IPs that are allowed to access? And it's just a small step how you can create a system that is more robust, more secure. Now, talking about Azure role-based access control, I think it's very important in the moment in time when you're using Azure and you want to secure your environment. Because, as I said before, try to avoid to use that master username and password that has full access, and also try to limit how much a user have access or how much a specific service have access to other services. If me, Radu, should have access only to storage and only to a specific Lambda or Azure functions, then I should only have access to that one. How I can do that? Well, when we're talking about Azure role-based access control, we have three elements that we need to be aware of. The first one is security principle. A security principle basically is the entity that gets access. Can be a person, can be a group, can be a service principal. And what I like here to mention when we're talking about the service principal, we are talking about a service. Azure function, an app service, a VM, you call it. The identity is an identity that can be managed inside it. You have a role. You are specifying the role. What kind of operation can be done? Read, write, delete, update, and so on. And what is the scope? Can be a subscription level, can be a resource group level, can be at resource level, only the storage or only the VM. And what you're doing, basically you're doing a role assignment. You are assigned a security principal, let's say a user that is part of a specific group, like development group. You say what is his role, it is contributor, and to what? To a specific resource. And by managing this in that way, on long term, you have better visibility about how you can access, how you can manage, and if you need to retire an access or to review who has access to what, it's more simple to analyze how a role was assigned to a group versus to take a look on each user how and what kind of actions he was able to do. So remember, all the time do duty segregation within your team, not at the team level, inside the team, per different roles that people might have at the level of your team. Specific all the time the permission, and don't provide more than they should have. And try to avoid to build that legacy permission that they had in the past. For example, I was on project A, so should I still have access to project A and things like that? And avoid to provide access to specific resources to specific people. Try to create blocks and try to group permission and resources in such a way to be logical grouped per different if we can call them line of business. What else we can do? We can secure our public endpoints and to protect them through the firewall. And sometimes firewall is not enough. More than we can do is that, for example, Azure Application Gateway has the ability to activate the WAF, Web App Firewall. The WAF is providing us a very fine and granular control on who can access, But not only that, but we have out-of-the-shelf protection for OAuth attacks at the firewall level, at the application gateway level. Means that any kind of attack will be stopped here, will be audited, will be logged, and our workloads can focus on their business. The load on CPUs when this kind of attacks will be the same because everything is stopped at the application gateway level. And we know that this is updated and is following all the recommendations and best practices that are on the market. How we can track? How can I track it? Well, first of all, what else we can do? We need to ensure that default security features of cloud services are active all the time, and sometimes even if they might be annoying, we shouldn't disable them. What we should do, we should more look on the best practices, look on the recommendation, and try to follow them, even if sometimes means that the investment, that the cost is higher, because implementing all the recommendation, all the best practices cost us money. And one of the most common causes from what I've seen that different security recommendations are not implemented is because of the cost in time and money, but especially from the time point of view. Okay, how we can track, how we can monitor. The first thing that we should do is to use Azure Security Center, even if you are using the free tier. Why? Because it's offering us a security score to know exactly what is our score and where we could do the improvements. Compliance information, especially from the infrastructure as a service point of view. We have the Azure Defender, that is the premium features that is very useful, especially when we integrate with the on-prem system, and also inventory. But the most important thing is that it's providing us the recommendations and identify where we could have different security issues. For example, even if you don't have too much time, I just want to show to you exactly what Security Center can do for us. He can identify exactly where we have issues, where we might have different data breach, and what we can do to improve that. Sometimes even it's come up with some recommendation and we can do automatically fixed by triggering, for example, a logic app behind the scene and things like that. So with just a few clicks, Security Center and Azure Defender not only protect us, but is offering us mechanisms to fix the problem that we have. On top of Azure Security Center, just try to take a look on Azure Advisor, because besides security, Azure Advisor can come up with recommendations about cost and do cost optimization, how we can have system more reliable, and also how we can improve our operational excellence. Also, we need all the time to track and monitor. We need to have the logs, we need to have the metrics, we need to keep them and to ensure that we are looking at them to analyze them. Now, the tricky part here is that where should I look for when I have different problems? First of all, remember that we have information about all the activity that the user has inside the Azure, and I'm not referring here the activity that he's doing when he's access a website and things like that. I'm referring more on the activity that the user is having when he's doing or is changing different configuration. So for example, if I would go here and I would add a new policy, let's say this policy, this action would appear automatically here once the policy would be created, and nobody would be able to delete it. Nobody from your team, from the subscription owner, or even from Azure, and will be kept there for a specific period of time when you can go and access the data. Another thing that you can do is to ensure that you are also logging the events that are happening inside the system and the process events. And all this information can be used to track exactly what happened. But remember, you need to have the logs and you need to keep them in a secure way. Now, for final thoughts. Well, there are a lot of things that that we can do to improve our system, and all the things there will be more things that we could do. But don't forget that Microsoft is offering the cloud adoption framework for Azure that has 4 different stages: define strategy, plan, ready, and adopt. But also is offering very good support for governance, compliancy, control, and secure. And that is the location where we should analyze exactly what are the actions that we should do to be aligned with all the security recommendations at the moment in time when we do a cloud adoption. Additional to this, we have the well architecture framework that is coming with a list of recommendations, best practices, and ways of doing things specific for specific industry and business domains that can help us to build a secure environment that is that can be used without any kind of problem by our customers and can be managed easily by our teams without being afraid that they could open a security hole and things similar like that. Thank you for joining this session. My name is Radu Vunvulea. You can find me very easily on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you have any kind of question related to cloud security or cloud in general, please let me know anytime on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Bye bye.